Living somatically. This is a phrase I use to describe a life in which you operate from a connected mind and body, where the body and mind work together to understand what's being experienced and what is truly needed on a moment-to-moment basis. And through purposeful support, movement, and attention, you provide for your needs. Now, if this sounds a bit esoteric or confusing, don't worry. I'm going to flush this out more and tell you what it has to do with overcoming emotional eating. I'm Lori Montry, a trauma-informed eating psychology coach, and I teach a nervous system approach to overcoming challenges with food and body. So rather than relying on unreliable willpower and control, I teach you how to heal the underlying reasons we humans often struggle with food. So back to living somatically. Now, due to past traumas, accumulated stress, overwhelm, and unprocessed emotions, our systems are under attack on a regular basis, right? This causes our nervous systems to react as if our physical and or emotional safety are under attack. And this is a very normal, natural reaction of our nervous systems, and it causes us to shift from our higher prefrontal cortex functioning to our more primitive survival functioning. And when our survival system is driving the bus, we may feel a sense of fear, terror even. We may feel shut down, as though we can't handle what life is bringing us in the moment, even if we can't pinpoint what's driving that feeling. Inside our bodies, we may feel any number of physiological responses to this survival state, such as shallow or quickened breathing, blurring vision, a sense of restlessness, a rapid heart rate, our stomachs may feel tight in knots, or we may lose sense of what's going on in our body altogether and feel kind of shut down and numb. In either case, it feels like there's a fire alarm going off and it can get really loud inside. Now, these signs alert us to the fact that our survival system got triggered and it is telling us to overreact to life in order to protect us. It's in these moments that we reach for things outside of us to quiet this cacophony. For many of us, food is that easy, quick, reliable resource to help smooth things out. Food produces feel-good brain chemicals. Swallowing stimulates the vagus nerve. Having food in the belly can switch on the parasympathetic state in order to begin the digestion process. Food provides us somewhere to put our attention, and it tastes good. It comforts us. So let's be honest, emotional eating has a purpose. And it makes sense that when the fire alarm of our survival system is going off, food works pretty well to quiet things down, at least in the short term. And this is why willpower and control will never be good strategies to overcome emotional or binge eating. Because in the moment when your system is feeling threatened and the alarms are going off, willpower and control are useless. You need something that will take you back to your sense of safety and well-being. It doesn't have to be food, but it has to be something. The problem is when you're in that triggered moment and your system is screaming so loudly, you don't have access to your ability to think of anything else, let alone carry it out. When your system is traveling 1,000 miles an hour, meditation or taking some deep breaths doesn't feel like a good solution. In fact, it can feel even scarier to put down your guard and try to relax. Thus, despite having great tools, you're going to continue to struggle to implement these good tools. And it's not that the tools have no place. I rely on many tools in my personal practice and in the work that I do with others. It's just that in that triggered moment, the part of your brain that's in charge is the part that follows default mode. That part, survival brain, says, food works, no need to try anything else. Survival brain doesn't care how you're going to feel about your decisions in 5 minutes. It just wants you alive in 5 minutes. And eating the food ensures your survival. So one of the most important keys to overcoming emotional and binge eating is to stay out of survival mode, right? And that doesn't mean that you never experience stress or difficult emotions. It means that you're aware of that stress early on because you know your system and you begin to work with that stress early on before it takes you to full-blown survival response. Because once you're in that full-blown survival, you're going to forget that there are even tools to help you, and you'll turn to the food nearly every single time. And this is where living somatically comes in. So living somatically, working deep with the nervous system to respond to its states in ways that are supportive and helpful, allows you to avoid getting stuck in survival mode. It allows you to have more conscious control over your behaviors, including reaching for food to deal with discomfort. And the goal of living somatically is to unburden the nervous system so that it is no longer living in chaos. And what results is a sense of safety, peace, and well-being. And when that's your overall sense of being, you don't need food to calm you. You're already there. You don't even think about using the food in ways other than for nourishment. Now, I already said that living somatically is a way of living in which you operate from a connected mind and body, right? Where the body and mind work together to understand what's being experienced, what's needed on a moment-to-moment basis, and then through purposeful support, movement, and attention, you provide for those needs. And most of us are much more mind than we are body, right? We think we are our brains and the thoughts that it produces. We're relatively closed to the body, the messages and the wisdom it has to share with us, as well as the healing potential that it can connect us to. And although we have a tremendous amount of awareness regarding what we're thinking, it's our bodies that inform us how we're feeling in our daily life. And when the body is burdened by a nervous system in chaos, our sense of joy and presence becomes much more limited. And in times like these, tools that rely on the cognitive brain are not very helpful. Trying to talk yourself out of survival mode doesn't really work. The prefrontal cortex here, which is responsible for impulse control, your good ideas, your creative thinking, and a concern for the future, turns off. Living somatically gives you the ability to be in constant communication with your nervous system, which thereby gives you the ability to respond to life, respond to circumstances in ways that give you the ability to navigate difficult situations and emotions without coping mechanisms. So the more you live somatically, the more your system calms down, the lower your levels of distress on a day-to-day basis. And this directly impacts your relationship with food, because when you're feeling resourced and attended to, you don't go looking to food to create that for you. This is why somatic experiencing, learning to communicate with your nervous system, and living within capacity are all of these things are modules within my Freedom from Emotional Eating course. If you're not familiar with somatic living and how to hear from and work with your nervous system, I get that all of this information I'm sharing with you today sounds great, but you may struggle to understand, what does it look like in practice? And there's so much to say about this way of living and the practices that will help you arrive there. But since we only have a few minutes together here in this video, I'm going to share an example from my own life of a recent day I had and how I really noticed that somatic living was helping me navigate it that day that in the past would have sent me to a lot of emotional eating. So my schedule last week was even more hectic than usual. I had several out of the ordinary work obligations. I had full responsibility for all of the rides for my kids, which equaled about 5 hours every day in the car. My morning practice, which really grounds me, was almost non-existent because of all that extra obligation. I wasn't feeling rested, and everything in life just kind of felt like a lot. Now, in the past, this would have been the perfect setup for putting my nervous system into chaos, right? The noise inside would have caused me to shut down and go looking for something outside me to fix this situation. Chocolate, comfort foods, and plenty of it. Thank goodness that's not how I roll anymore. These days, I have an intimate relationship with my nervous system and the ability to notice somatically what state my nervous system is in. So last Wednesday morning, when I got back from my 2-hour drive in the car in the traffic, I was feeling overwhelmed. But instead of running around in circles all day, without focus, without direction, with a nervous system in chaos, moving from one snack to another, I was able to recognize what was going on for me. I took a few minutes to sit quietly, go within my body, and starting at my feet and opening up to the sensations that I found as I worked my way up through the body, I was able to identify many areas of tension and restriction. My stomach was in knots. I felt very heavy all over. So I used my somatic experiencing tools to support my belly. I used my breath to bring quiet. I used a tool called the push away to give myself a little space to be still and reflect. And once my body was more settled, I had regained access to my creative problem-solving prefrontal cortex, or what I call my higher self. And my higher self acknowledged and validated my experience. And this resourced part of me then began looking for some solutions. What did I need today? How could I better support myself? How would I need to alter what I had planned for my day in order to stay within my window of capacity, the capacity that I had available that day? Now, because this is something that I do often, many things came to mind. First, I acknowledged that those long rides in the car and in the traffic, they were stressful. So what could I do to make the rest of the week and the rest of those drives less stressful? Well, instead of focusing on how much traffic and how slow we were going, I decided to listen to one of my many audiobooks. Instead of trying to balance my coffee cup and not spill it on myself at every bump, I decided I had to put my coffee in a non-spill cup. Silly, but important. Also, I had to leave enough time to allow me to stop somewhere and use the bathroom, because having to hold it for a long time is a really big stressor for my body. Already, the drives were feeling less and less daunting for the rest of the week, just because I had offered myself those things. Next, I turned my attention to the rest of the day. I could sense I didn't have the capacity to take care of everything that my mind said this was essential, right? So I decided on what was really non-negotiable. My group meetings, my one-on-one calls, along with picking up the kids. These were the things that were the most important. Did I have enough capacity to do these things? I checked in with my body. Yes, I could do those things if the other things were modified. Okay, so what do I do with the other things? Okay, dinner became a roasted chicken from the market that I'd get on the way home from school. The workout I had planned that day went from a VO2 training day to a 15-minute jog and a few minutes of yoga. I reached out to a colleague I was to have a phone call with, and I moved it to another day. I also committed to taking a few breaks in the day to check back in with my system to make sure it was liking what I was providing and how things were going. So you get the idea, right? Through my invaluable tools and practices, I lovingly connected with my body, understood what I was experiencing, and then provided myself with the best case scenario I could to navigate the overwhelm that was coming up for me. And it was so much better than the old way of shutting down, not doing anything, or pushing through, and then using food or other coping mechanisms just to survive the day. And I felt nourished and cared for, which allowed my system the flexibility to come back to a sense of safety and well-being. And this is a way of living that I would love every single person to be able to experience. And that's why I do the work that I do. It's also why I created my free resources, which you can download right below this video. Living somatically is one of the 3 keys necessary to overcome emotional eating. In my resources, I explore the other 2 as well. So as always, I would love to hear your questions, your comments, your insights. And if you found something interesting or helpful in the video, please hit the like and subscribe button so that I can more easily get you and others relevant content.